I first read the screenplay for Something Wild about a year and a half or 2 years after this tremendous debacle that I had suffered on the work front with a movie called Swing Shift, which was a film that Tak Fujimoto and I made along with a bunch of other terrific people. Craig McKay was the editor. And we had the picture taken over by the studio, re-edited, rewritten, and all of our work was essentially destroyed. Our individual work, our collaborative work. And that experience had left me feeling, really questioning whether I wanted to direct anymore. You make such a personal investment as a director on your own behalf and on the behalf of your collaborators that if it's going to be at risk like this, is it really a risk worth taking? Is there something else I'd rather be doing? It was a time to open a bookstore. And as time went by, I started getting the itch to direct again. So in a way, the screenplay came out of the blue. It came at a great moment because now moving over to Orion Pictures, a company that was known for their encouragement to filmmakers to fulfill their vision. And Orion was a studio that kind of said, we're financiers, we're not filmmakers. We're not going to tell you how to make your movie. We're going to finance it if we like the screenplay and if we trust you. Something Wild became a chance to kind of start all over again. And I felt in many ways that it was my first film. I love road movies. I love crime story movies. And I guess in a way, Something Wild is an amalgam of those genres, but again, all mixed together in a totally original, endlessly surprising way. It's what made it a great script to read, and I think part of what makes it an exciting movie to see is you never know what's going to happen next. Whatever you've been expecting might happen next on the basis of kind of the formulas we've gotten to know so well as moviegoers, something else was going to happen, and it was going to be terrific. It wasn't going to take you out of the movie. It was going to pull you even deeper into this story. And I thought the dialogue was great. It was a lean, mean screenplay, which offered an opportunity to make a lean, mean movie. I liked the simplicity of Something Wild. I think that, Tak and I, we started out on a Roger Corman women's prison movie together, $180,000 budget. Then the next time we worked together, we upped the ante a little bit with Melvin and Howard. And we had a chance to really do the kind of expressive camera work with that film that we longed to do, that we admired so much in other films. And we really came up with a great look for Melvin and Howard. And when the next thing came along for us to do something with, it was Swing Shift. Now, this was a big, old period script made on a relatively low budget, but again, we had the camera department, we had the studio facilities, and now we really kind of pushed the Hollywood look. And we wanted to do as many crane shots as we could, and we wanted to really kind of paint in broad strokes because also it was a big, broad historical story. And somehow or other, I think by the time Something Wild came along, I think we welcomed the opportunity to strip down our visual approach, to simplify, and to find terrific compositions and try to let the action play in front of the camera and follow the story in a more discreet kind of way. Even as we were going for kind of what would basically be a stripped-down, observational camera angle approach to this story, we wanted the visual tone within the frame to mirror, amongst many other things, Lulu Audrey's extreme personality. We wanted to have kind of a hothouse of colors whenever possible. We were working with Norma Morrisseau as the production designer. So we put a tremendous amount of work into the palette, and that extended very much, obviously, to Lulu Audrey's wardrobe as well. She was Melanie at the beginning of the movie. Was all this stuff and all these necklaces and stuff, which was all gotten from this store that Norma had discovered in New York called Craft Caravan. It was actually owned and run by a guy who I met at that time, a guy named Ford Wheeler. Ford brought all this amazingly visually rich stuff from all over, especially Africa and the Middle East, to his New York store. And Norma bought this stuff and put it on Melanie. So that was kind of like a flashpoint. Once we saw how Lulu was going to be dressed, we were encouraged to kind of like push that envelope. When we got to Pennsylvania and we go to the reunion, we wanted to get very kind of Americana. So you'll see it gets very kind of bled out, and the colors you basically get are the red, white, and blue of this centennial reunion, this class of '76 or whatever they were, with lots of patriotic colors and stuff like that. When they go out on the road, we wanted to have a rich kind of wild side visual palette to it. Filmmakers are, whether we like it or not, kind of visual anthropologists. We're kind of capturing what the country looks like at the moment that we're making this film. And I love, small town America. I love suburban America, rural America. I love urban America is good too. But I like the vibe there a lot. I have a lot of respect for people who keep their lives together, and it's more challenging than ever before in America today. So it's a privilege to kind of take a look and inhabit your movie with these communities where good people live. And these are the kind of houses they live in. This is where they go throughout the course of the day. Here's what they dress up like. Turn the sound down. Here's what it's like to travel across a portion of America. What does that look like in 1986? You kind of want your imagery to add to the visual anthropology of our era. It's getting very, very highfalutin, but you kind of, since we're talking about this, that's something that one thinks about a little bit. Casting Something Wild was 2/3 a lot of fun and easy, and 1/3 difficult. When I read the script, even I think on my very first reading, I was picturing Melanie Griffith in the part of Lulu. I had recently seen her in Brian De Palma's movie Body Double, and I thought she gave a great performance. I'd noticed her coming up through Arthur Penn movies and stuff, and she was Tippi Hedren's daughter, so one noted her. And in Body Double, I thought, wow, this is one of the most adventurous, courageous, young American actresses that we've got. And she looks great. And wouldn't she be amazing as Lulu, this incredibly adventurous, no-holds-barred character that Max has written? So Melanie was sort of the very first person that we went to. In talking about the part of Charlie, I was hanging out with Kevin Kline in those days, and I kind of thought of Kevin Kline, and in talking to the folks at Orion, they thought, oh yeah, he'd be terrific, and so would Jeff Daniels, who had made a movie for Orion. They were very, very, very impressed with Jeff. I loved Jeff, and something really clicked for me at the mention of his name, because I thought, again, here's a very kind of formidable total reality actor who also is funny.
It just made me vice president.
And I felt that Jeff could really kind of walk that tightrope of staying true to his character, true to the situation, but bring his innate sense of humor to play in the scenes.
Want some?
No.
Come on, Charlie. Come on. It's okay.
No, thank you very much.
Be a sport, Charlie.
All right, heck. Give me a sip. Okay.
One of the things that I had a lot of fun with was trying to find yet another dimension to Charlie. And what is it? How can we make Charlie even more likable? Luckily, we're going to have Jeff Daniels, who's just, you like him anyway. But on one level, here's a guy who abandons everything, abandons his job, abandons apparently his family, and takes off on a wild weekend with this extraordinary young woman. How do we help the audience to like Charlie through thick and thin? So one of the things that intrigued me was, since he's going to be on the road, what's he like with strangers? What's he like with people that he has, momentary encounters with? So I wound up putting an emphasis on showing how effortlessly Charlie interacts with people of all ages, all races, all genders, how nice he is to everybody. That's something that wasn't, it was implicit, I think, in Max's script, but it wasn't explicit.
Thanks, Rose. Whether you put, Mickey Stanley and... What? What's so funny?
You.
What? What'd I do?
I'm calling the waitress by her name.
Well, that's what name tags are for.
Here you go.
Thanks, Rose. It just makes things a little friendlier, a little more personal. I like that.
What we tried to do was to suggest that somehow Charlie was being empowered by the warmth he brought to strangers, and that as he went into his solitary pursuit of Ray, in a funny way, he had the support of all the good people out there.
Sunglasses. I need sunglasses.
Nah, keep them. You're beautiful.
Okay, all right.
That sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's something that was a lot of fun working with. Now begins a search for Ray, and I thought it's vital if we want the audience to be afraid of Ray, I've got to be afraid of Ray. And we started seeing all the exciting, all the top young upcoming actors in New York and in California. Just we saw everybody, all the tons of young men who I had liked already in other movies, and people from the music world like John Doe, who had acted a little bit, came in, and he was wonderful, but he didn't scare me. And at a certain point, Melanie said, you're still looking for Ray. And I said, yeah, I feel like we've seen everybody. We had wonderful casting directors, Billy Hopkins and Risa Brayman, and they were out there, beating the bushes. And she said, well, there's this guy in my acting class who, if you haven't seen him yet, maybe you should see him. He's pretty good. His name's Ray Liotta. So Ed and I spoke with Billy and Risa, and they said, oh, no, we saw him. He's not interesting. So I said, well, since Melanie, has suggested him, and since we're kind of like still really far away from finding anyone, let's have him come in anyway. And Ray came in and scared the hell out of me and thrilled me. So Ray Liotta got the part. It was Ray's first movie. He had been on a television soap opera, and working with this guy was just a dream. It was a beautiful experience, and he did obviously an amazing job, and I'm very proud to have been, this is where the directorial ego comes in. Did I get anything out of Ray? No. Ray had it all in him, but I did direct Ray's first movie. So that's a good thing.
I'm going to tell you something, Charlie. When I used to do this for a living, I used to pull a job in some liquor store, run around the corner, pull off the ski mask I was wearing, put on a different coat, and walk right back into the place I just robbed. Man, it was wild.
Actors are the ones that have to bring the magic forth, and that includes the smaller parts, includes the extras. One of Roger Corman's basic boilerplate rules of directing is that you have to cast every part with extraordinary care, because if you're going to cut to somebody, maybe it's just the clerk at the convenience store, they own the movie now for 1 second, 5 seconds. The movie is in the hands of whoever you're cutting to. And Roger said, it's a great opportunity for you to bring a heightened degree of involvement to the casting, is to cast people that interest you whenever possible.
Is your car, pal?
Huh?
I've been admiring your bike.
Oh, you interested in motorcycles?
No, I just like big things between my legs.
Thank you, officer.
There's a couple in Something Wild who are out at the dance. When Charlie finally goes out of the dance floor with Lulu, and they dance to the Feelies, by the way, one of my favorite bands in the world, they're dancing side by side with another couple. And, these are folks that came in on an extra call. And I liked their personality, I liked their energy, and we cast them. And then when we got there, we discovered that wow, they're great dancers. So now we have the chance, because when I say, it's me and the producers, everybody who's in this process of casting, our instincts to cast these seemingly interesting individuals led us to having fantastic dancers share the floor with Lulu and Charlie, and now double the pleasure of the scene, double the message of the scene. And again, in fact, come to think of it, here's Charlie kind of watching the moves of the great dancer and kind of trying to do his version of what the great dancer is doing. And I know that Jeff Daniels loved that a lot. I love to see it a lot. At one point, by the way, Jeff Daniels came to me after we had done a scene at the motel when Charlie awakens with a horrendous hangover and is out looking for an aspirin or an Alka-Seltzer, something to try to make him feel better. And there's a small part of a handyman. The handyman was played by a guy who I had just met named Jim Roach. Jim's an artist and an art professor at FSU in Tallahassee, where we shot the movie. Not an actor, performance artist, not an actor. He comes and he said, if this guy came up to me and wanted an Alka-Seltzer, I'd want to give him some advice. Do you think, could I say something to him? And I said, well, yes, you can. He said, here's what I want. I said, just tell him. So on the first take, Jeff doesn't know what's going to happen. He's got his scripted lines, and Jim Roach comes back and tells him,
remember, no matter what, it's better to be a live dog than a dead lion. I felt the same way before. Hey, good luck with you.
Yeah, thank you.
And you can see Jeff Daniels in the movie. He's kind of like that. And cut. And a second later, Jeff came running up to me. This is one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten from an actor in regard to what we're talking about or anything. And Jeff came up and goes like, where do you find these people? This is amazing what's going on here. So I was very encouraged, in this, pushing the envelope and trying to find particularly interesting, terrific people in the smaller parts. By the way, at the end of the movie, great moment for me as a director. We're shooting the scene when Jeff is cleaning out his office, and he's saying goodbye to Jack Gilpin, his colleague in the office. And Jeff comes to me and says, Jonathan, do you mind if I add one line here when I say goodbye to Jack? And I said, sure, go ahead. So we roll the camera, and sure enough...
Hey, Larry, it's better to be a live dog than a dead lion.
It's been good working with you, Charlie.
And there it was. And this is a case of a tremendously creative individual living in Tallahassee, Florida, who actually has this idea that brings full-blown, I think, Max's theme for the whole movie, in a way. Kind of enriches not only the movie, but in retrospect, the screenplay. Roger also said, even when you're casting your villain in a movie, whenever you're casting the bad guys, you have to really beware of treating them and presenting them like bad guys per se. That in a movie that has a traditional hero and villain, and maybe in Something Wild, Charlie's a traditional hero on paper and Ray is a traditional villain, but your hero's only going to be as interesting as your quote-unquote villain is formidable, and that means as multidimensional as possible.
I want Lulu. Is that your name this week? Lulu?
Yes.
You know, Charlie, she's not gonna be too happy driving around in a station wagon the rest of her life. You better think about that. You better ask yourself if you really want her.
I really want her.
Actors are going to bring their own ideas to the movie. They're going to bring their own ideas to the set. And as a director, not only is it maybe not your job to tell everybody exactly what to do, maybe your job as a director, when you're working with quality people, when you're working with a great camera operator who's going to have his own ideas, a great director of photography is going to have his own ideas about the staging of a scene, and more importantly, with actors who are going to come with a lot of ideas and a lot of imagination to the way they want to do the scene, is don't plan your shots out. Let them come onto the set and just watch them walk through the scene. The idea of no preconceived ideas of shots. Don't rehearse. I hate to rehearse. I've always been, because I wasn't really brought up in the theater, and I kind of came to filmmaking via script writing, I was always afraid, even as I am to this day, of the idea of like, what if the actors get it just right on a rehearsal, and you're not filming? Wouldn't that be awful? So Tack and I got into this idea of like, we're going to rehearse on film. Let's get the actors on the set. Let's find out how they want to move around. Then Tack can light it. And then the actors can go get their makeup on and get their costumes on and come back. And now we can start rehearsing on film, which is what I love. Let the actors start finding their way into the scene. We keep improving the shot a little bit. And then at a certain point, it's really working. And this process has all happened on film. So that's what I love to do. And that's what we did with Something Wild. Just like, okay, let's take a look. Let's hear the words. Let's see how you want to move around. It's an approach that I've really kind of fallen in love with and swear by. There was one moment when we were filming that pops out in my memory as just like an on-the-spot, oh boy, this movie is going to be great. And it's funny because it's a tiny little moment in a way, but it's outside the reunion. Charlie realizes that he's lost his wallet, and his line in the script is, "I'm fucked." And the first time I saw Jeff Daniels deliver in a very low-key way, in a very particular Jeff Daniels way, those two words, I just went, oh my God. This movie's going to be amazing.
If I don't get my wallet back, you know what?
What?
I'm fucked!
And we also felt at the time, because this is a script and a movie now that depends on the element of surprise to drive it forward, let's let the tone change. This kind of right turn that the story makes when Ray enters the picture. Let's keep that kind of as a surprise for the viewers. And Tack, on his own, in that cameraman, director of photography as storyteller mode, Tack felt it's very important to do a dramatic lighting shift at this moment. So I loved watching Tack do these little sneaky, kind of wonderful mood-enhancing things. And I felt, because I was kind of very consumed with the musical dimension of the movie, I thought, we have to do something very special with the music at this moment. So the Feelies happen to be playing at this high school reunion. And one of the songs on their Crazy Rhythms album had this very disturbing kind of introduction and then build up rhythmically into an explosive rock song. And I asked them if they would kind of be in a light mode leading up to this moment when we're now going to reveal Ray. And could they then, for our transition, go into the introduction to, let's say, The Boy with Perpetual Nervousness, which might be the song. They agreed. So that's what we hear. This is the Feelies, their kind of sound, driving this transitional moment. And I think what we see in the movie is, for me, because I love that moment, I think there's a beautiful fusion of elements that come into play, at the center of which is Ray and Margaret Collins' performance. I met a music editor who was a new music editor, who in fact was moving into music editing and had not done a full movie as a music editor yet. Craig McKay had heard about Susanna Perrick. And I met Susanna, and just the sparks, she had read the script, and the sparks just really flew between Susanna and me. And the next thing I knew, we were talking about how thrilling it would be to score the entire movie with source music, to not have a composer. To rely on the music that would be heard on radios, the band is playing a song at the reunion, to really go that way. This was back in the days when it did not cost a fortune to get the rights to put recorded music in your movie. That's changed completely now, of course. I wanted to have a shift in the musical temperament of the movie. I thought while Charlie's with Lulu, and Lulu is dressed in the accoutrement of countries and cultures from all over the world, let's have a very kind of world music feeling, which to me means an extremely good vibe, positive, upful kind of music. Then when Ray enters the picture, let's leave all those good vibes behind. Let's switch to guitar-driven American rock.
All right, I'll drive, Charlie.
And from then on in, we don't hear no world music anymore. We don't have any more good vibe music. We have, you know, kind of the edgy, thrilling, dangerous, guitar-driven sound of the songs that Susanna and I chose to populate the rest of the movie. After Ray dies, only then do we get to hear the music, the good-feeling music that started the movie. We're back now, actually, into the hands of Jimmy Cliff. The film essentially ends with a Jimmy Cliff song that scores the fact that Charlie's going to move on. He's been infused with this positiveness. He's left his bonehead white-collar job, and he's got Jimmy Cliff in his head.
As I look out my window, I don't understand what I see. Once again, we are letting it happen.
I wanted David Byrne to create an opening song. And because we were going to have the song Wild Thing somewhere in the movie, David had the idea of doing a kind of a version of Wild Thing that he wound up calling Loco de Amor, and actually brought Celia Cruz in to sing the title song for Something Wild.
My little wild thing, my wild thing.
Of course, you know, the icing on the cake is at the end of the movie when Charlie and Audrey are reunited. They get in their car and start to drive away, and the camera pans around onto the Black Cinderella, Sister Carol, singing her version of Wild Thing. The movie starts with Celia Cruz quoting Wild Thing, ends with Sister Carol with her version of Wild Thing. I mean, how good can the music get in any one movie?
Come rain and shine, some drinking wine, some even dressed like Frankenstein. Move up your waist, your body line, but just you do it right on time. Wild thing, oh, it is a wild thing.
Even as Susanna Perich and I had dedicated ourselves to the goal of a source music only movie, we got kind of 90% there. And we found that there were a couple of places that wanted a little musical coloration that source just wasn't, we couldn't find source that was appropriate or even well-motivated. So I said, well, you know, I have two different friends who are brilliant composers. I'm sure that Laurie Anderson would come in and do this sweet, light scene. And John Cale certainly would come in and do some kind of, you know, Velvet Underground-y kind of freak-out music for the heavy violence. To make a long story short, needless to say, they did come in. And Laurie couldn't come up with anything sweet that worked. John couldn't come up with anything chaotic that worked there. But Laurie came up with something terrifying for that scene, and John came up with something very lovely and kind of ephemeral for the sweet scenes. So now the movie had beyond source contributions from John Cale and Laurie Anderson, which of course I was very proud of and very thrilled to have as part of the movie. The film, of course, you know, builds to this intense fight scene when Ray invades Charlie's home, and where they engage in a tremendous fight, which proves to be the death scene of Ray. And I really wanted to make that scene work. I felt that it really had to be horrifying because violence is horrifying and home invasions are horrifying and knives are horrifying. And I thought, this movie could lose its integrity or nail it, depending on how it presents this encounter. And Tack, and myself and Ron Bozeman, the AD, we really put our heads together and kind of like, what shots do we need to make this a really, really, really extraordinary fight? And it was the opposite of rehearse on film and bring the actors in and where you're going to stand. This was sort of an abandonment of that in this situation, and now it was like a storyboarded sequence.
Hiya, Charlie.
Ray.
And, we did it without stunt people. We had a stunt coordinator, a great guy, John Robotham, who was going to double in the fight, but there was never that moment where Jeff or Ray didn't want to do it themselves. The scariest moment of that shoot was at one point they're grappling for the knife, and even in those days it seems like pre-watching on monitors, but we had monitors, and they were on a set down in Tallahassee, and I was watching on the monitor, and this tremendous struggle for the knife, and Dolly's in on the knife, and now the knife goes flying out of the hand, and oh, that was great. And I hear this, and in that obsessive director's moment, I went, keep it quiet in there. And I hear this voice go, fuck you, I just got stabbed by the knife. It was Vinnie Gerardo, the assistant cameraman. And the knife had gone flying, hit the floor, and slid across and had poked Vinnie in the toe. And stuff like this. But that was kind of our big moment in the shoot. This was just an uncomplicated joy. It was really a rebirth for me after the kind of the trauma of Swing Shift. This was a rebirth. It really did feel like a first film, and the editing went beautifully. Orion did a terrific job. Unfortunately, we miscalculated how to get the audience in there, if indeed there ever was going to be a big audience. But I loved the experience, and I just love Something Wild. I just think it's a terrific picture.